Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated Epsilon Upsilon Omega chapters, Building Your Economic Legacy, Part 2 seminar. We thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your Saturday to join with us. For those that decided to join back in with us this month, I know if you're like I am, we had an excellent presentation in our first economic legacy. And I'm excited and looking forward to what's in store for each and every one of you on today. I have to say that as we are celebrating Black History Month, it could not be a more better time to reflect on the great history that we have, even as we talk about wealth and economics. I think back to Black Wall Street. I think to our current Black individuals who are billionaires, millionaires, none other than Oprah Winfrey, none other than Michael Jordan, none other than Jay-Z, our lovely sister Beyonce, and so many more. But to be able to look at them as entrepreneurs and those that are game changers, we have our very own right here in the city of Trenton and Mercer County that we can look to too, to help us strive and become better and more fiscal individuals of our economics as our economic wealth. So I thank you for joining with the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha on today. I encourage you to sit back, take notes. We walked away with so much information the first time that we did this, and I know you'll walk away even today with more information. And as you walk away with this information, I encourage each and every one of you that this information does not fall on deaf ears, that you take this information and make sure we all do a better job in being more responsible fiscally and economically for our futures of ourselves and our families, our friends, and even our communities, which we are all responsible for. And as ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha, we will continue to do what we do to be of service to all mankind. So to the first and finest, job well done. And I'm looking forward to each and every one of us enjoying another economic legacy event on today. Thank you.
Thank you to our president for that nice introduction. Welcome everyone to the second of Epsilon Upsilon Omega's 4-part series around building your economic legacy. My name is Farida Stokes, and I am one of the co-chairs for this committee. Thank you all for attending. This initiative is part of 5 program targets implemented by our national organization, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Target 3, building your economic legacy, focuses on personal financial planning and asset accumulation, credit repair and monitoring, and entrepreneurship and the Black dollar. Our committee has worked hard to address these topics. And if you joined us during our first program that was held on January 26, you know the information discussed about protecting your economic legacy through the importance of wills and trusts was timely and relevant, no matter what stage you are in life. We ask that you mark your calendars for Saturday, March 26th. Our topic will be real estate as the cornerstone for wealth. And this is where we'll talk about housing and real estate investing. On Saturday, April 30th, author Rodney Brooks will complete our series as he discusses his book, Fixing the Racial Wealth Gap. So let's get ready to dive into how we can create generational wealth. I'd like to introduce our presenter for today, Ms. Kenita Bullock. As an award-winning multi-generational wealth manager, Kenita Bullock uses investment and financial planning strategies to help clients achieve their life goals and build generational wealth. She and her team work one-on-one with clients to maximize each investment portfolio's impact on their retirement goals and chart a clear course to accomplish other financial priorities while living a fulfilled life during the process. In her role as a retirement plan advisor for corporate 401k and 403b plans, she brings her certified financial planning and fiduciary expertise to the entire organization with a proven process to address retention, recruitment, and financial wellness in the workplace. Mrs. Bullock is a graduate of Smith College with a Bachelor of Arts in Government and completed a Fulbright Fellowship in South Korea in 2008. Kenita began her career in the investment management industry in one of the largest investment firms in the nation and left her corporate role to help individuals, families, and organizations as a private wealth management and retirement plan advisor in 2010. Kenita founded Master Plan Investment Group in 2019 with a mission to enrich the lives of her clients and their legacy. She became a certified financial planner professional in April of 2020. And this is a big deal because currently only 3.7% of CFP professionals nationwide are Black or Latino, and only 23.3% are women. Kenita is committed to improving these statistics. She holds FINRA Series 7 and 66 securities registrations and holds life insurance for term, permanent, and long-term care and health licenses. Kenita received her MBA from the New Jersey Institute of Technology, where she recognized the future role of technology in the investment management industry and uses this knowledge as a foundation for her business practices. She is a frequent speaker on financial topics such as building generational wealth, retirement income strategies, investing, insurance, long-term care, financial planning, and general financial literacy. Kenita grew up in Lawrenceville, New Jersey. She and her husband, Eric, who's an education administrator, and their two daughters live in Trenton, New Jersey. She is an active volunteer with many community organizations and has a passion for traveling, gardening, and live music. So I'd like to welcome you, Kenita. I know that we are all in for a treat today. And as our president mentioned, I hope everyone will be taking notes because I'm sure some gems will be dropped today. Thank you. You're on mute. I'm sorry.
I just saw that note. So thank you. Good morning, everyone. I am very excited to be here and honored to be invited. I understand that this topic is so timely and so important, and really congratulations and kudos to the AKAs to recognize that we need to take this time and have full conversations, not just packed in one session, but really complete conversations about estate planning, wealth building, and all of the other topics that are to come. So really commend you all for doing this work. So I have a presentation to share, and like those that have spoken before me, there's definitely a lot of value here, but we want this to be a dynamic, engaging conversation because I'm not here just to speak at you or educate you. I am committed to action, right? We know what to do in so many cases, but I really want you all to be fulfilled and compelled to move, to implement a lot of the conversations that we'll have today. And if you don't have all the information you need to do so, then I need to hear that. And there will be ways to provide feedback to get that information you need to take action. All right. So as I prepare to share, and we know technology, sometimes our best friend and other times a fair weather friend. So bear with me in the event that any delays take place. All right. Are you all able to see my screen clearly? Fantastic. All right, great. So we'll talk a little bit more about the details of the conversation, but it's full, it's packed. So one thing I wanted to start off with is your economic legacy. And for so long, we've been taught your legacy is just the money, but it's so much more than that. Your legacy is being a great community volunteer, being a great parent, being a great aunt, a friend. So when we think about the legacy that is so important to us all, we think about managing your money, achieving your goals, peace of mind, and fulfillment. So I don't want to leave that fulfillment piece out of the conversation because when we invest, it's an investment of our time, our talents, and our treasures, but we need to make sure we're thinking about a legacy on more than one level. So I wanted to just start off talking a bit about that as well. As we transition into what are the fundamentals of legacy building and an economic legacy, we often hear about the importance of an emergency fund, insurance, retirement and succession planning. And so excited to hear that real estate ownership is in the next session, but in passive income, the last gifting and education savings, all of these pieces are not necessarily something you have to achieve at once, but gradually over time should definitely be a part of how you strategize and really build your economic legacy. So when we think about what are the numbers, right? Emergency fund is often 3 to 6 months of expenses. So that seems like a lot, I know, but when I think of the low interest rates we're getting at our savings or banking institutions, we really want to be mindful of how much we're putting in cash for emergency fund, but recognize it's critical. It's really the core of a strong foundation of economic legacy and security. So if we were to just think last year, the 2 years ago during the pandemic, there were so many of us that did not have that 3 months of expenses. Certain people were furloughed or reduced hours, and we were really caught in a very difficult position. So I always like to start here because we always assume that just because money is coming in or our jobs seem to be secure, that's not important. But what happens when emergencies do come up? We revert to debt, which we'll talk about today. So we don't want to compromise accumulating debt because we've overlooked the number one foundation, if you will, of building an economic legacy, which is an emergency fund. Personal insurance, we'll have another conversation about this, but we'll highlight it today. But disability insurance, life insurance, long-term care insurance, all of these plans are really thinking about how do I take care of my family in the event that something unexpected happens. So disability insurance could be something you don't think about until you need it. So having some plan at work or some small option, even through savings, is really important to have. Life insurance, as we know, taking care of our loved ones who haven't planned, pulling monies together through the family, we don't have to do that anymore. So if we're just mindful of how we can incorporate life insurance at work or even independently, we won't have to cross that bridge. Long-term care, again, another conversation, but we all have parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents that we've seen struggle through their older age, in their 80s, 90s. Our bodies aren't built to last forever. So we have to build in a plan to, even as a family, talk about how are we going to provide care that we are comfortable with for our loved ones. And we know we'll be in that position one day too. Retirement and succession planning, we'll talk about that today, so I won't go into too much detail. Real estate ownership and passive income. I'm excited that Ms. Farida will talk about that in the next section. Gifting and education savings is critical. And you don't have to do it the way everyone used to do it, which was 529s, but there are other ways and more creative ways to save for college education. And we can talk about that as well. So a little bit about myself. There was a great bio read, so I won't belabor this page too much, but as a certified financial planner, I'm really looking at the comprehensive package, right? Not just retirement planning, but we want to talk through and take care of your entire financial picture. So we're talking through today, budgeting, saving, retirement, and investing. And that's so important when you think about, are you prepared? Not just are you prepared for retirement, but are you prepared to have a financial legacy and an economic legacy that you're proud of? A few things I'll just point out is, number one, that I'm a mother. I have 2 little girls. I understand what it's like to have to allocate monies to this and that and try to retire and say, all of those are challenging to manage at once. So when we think about how do we have a strong economic legacy, it's a balance. And it's knowing what priorities are important for us to focus on now, but also knowing and being okay with the fact that they change over time. So Bella and Madison are 5 and 6. So before today, I was at chess club mentoring program, getting them ready for music lessons. It's a juggle financially too. So just a little bit about our firm. We primarily focus on retirement planning, strategies for investing, building generational wealth. And that means we have young advisors, really seasoned advisors, because cryptocurrency may not be a conversation for some clients, but it definitely is for their grandchildren. So we want to make sure we're not only focusing on the grandparent that's prepared for retirement, has saved well, wants to make sure the next generation is just as prepared, but all three and those to come. So we'll now jump into a conversation about the real important piece, budgeting, saving, and investing.
Coming up with a plan is one of the most important things you can do to set yourself on the path toward your retirement goals. But like many people, you might be unsure how to get started. Let's take a look at 3 financial planning steps you can put into action today. Budget. Taking a close look at how much you earn and what you currently spend your money on is the first step. What are your essential expenses like rent, groceries, and transportation? Next, determine your non-essential expenses, going to the movies, a cup of gourmet coffee. See where you can cut back and write it down or enter it into an online budgeting program. This will allow you to see what you have to work with and where you can make smart choices about your financial future. Save. Now it's time to tuck some of that newfound money away. Remember, it's never too early or too late to start saving for retirement. An IRA or your company's 401k plan is a great place to start. You'll enjoy some tax benefits, and your company may even reward you by matching a portion of the money you invest in your 401k. That's right, free money to help kickstart your retirement piggy bank. Invest. The investments you choose will depend on your age, your tolerance for risk, and when you'd like to retire. But don't worry, you don't have to go it alone. Retirement plans like 401ks usually offer investments called target date funds, professionally managed mutual funds that take the guesswork out of investing. A financial advisor can help you through the decision-making process. Budget, save, invest. A plan to help you make smart retirement choices today. Your future self will thank you.
So wanted to break up the conversation just a little bit. So hopefully there were some that did enjoy that conversation and quick video, but wanted to talk about budgeting. And I know a lot of people don't like the term budgeting. It's restrictive. It makes me think I can't enjoy myself, but that's not true. It's just about balance. I have a business that I run. I have a husband that I also need to build a relationship with and make sure we love each other for the rest of our lives. I have children I have to tend to. So that's a budget of my time. So I also have to budget my resources. So this is one solution that we often talk through. 20% of the fun stuff, 20% of the finance need, and then 60% for the rest. So when we look at what that means, it's going to look a little different for everyone. All right, so we're going to break it down. And this is the point at which you should really have a little notebook, start writing things down. 60% of your gross income should be dedicated to these expenses: basic food, clothing needs, essential housing items. And when we think about what this does or what this looks like, it's important to write it down. I often look at what are my the delivery expenses, right? If we do Uber Eats or other types of services, that is a part of your expense. What are the subscriptions that we sign up for that maybe we don't really use? So we always have small line items that tend to go overlooked. But often if you look at that line item and we're trying to find some real money to invest for savings, not necessarily retirement, but something down the line, it's often found in those smaller line items. So be diligent taking a list of what you're spending monthly. Take a look at your bank statement or even your debit card transactions. If you're very diligent in paying or buying everything on credit and paying it off, go to those statements. Don't do it by memory. When you do that, and I can even follow up and send you an Excel chart that we have, which automatically groups these buckets into 60, 20, and 20. you'll see where you are. Okay, now we want to talk about how you should save. And when we think about 20% of our gross income is divided into savings for retirement, savings for long-term, and short-term savings, you have to know what those dollars look like. So just to throw some real life situations in this scenario, not everyone who may be married or have a partnership puts all of their money in one bucket. This is important to consider when you're trying to implement this plan as well. So one conversation I do encourage you to have is, how do we do this as a family? And or how do I do this as an individual? This is a simple way to start. What's the paycheck? What's the income coming in today? What's the overall expenses that I see coming out of the account on a monthly basis? But don't forget about those quarterly, non-frequent costs as well. When we think about increasing our savings and investing, it's always important to start off with knowing what you do today. I hear a lot of my friends, and myself included, Amazon is my worst nightmare, but also my best friend. When we think about those orders, and especially the ones that have our credit card just easily connected, I don't even have to remember that QR code, the code on the back. That's dangerous. But if we are mindful of what is going to be that one thing that may disturb all of this goodness that we're working on, we have to put that up front, be honest, and say, okay, how can I better manage that Amazon account, that auto order, or these sites that I like to frequent when I have a 5 or 10 minutes, and then I get the surprise package in the mail a couple of days later. So we want to make sure we're conscious of our overall strategies and how to get to where we want to be. But we have to first start with just being honest with ourselves. And it's okay to treat yourself. You work hard and do for everyone, and you have to do for yourself too. But we have dreams, we have goals, we have a legacy we want to fulfill. And these small sacrifices are what's required to get there. So I'm going to pause for a quick question and answer and fun part of the session. And Farida's going to take over.
All right, thank you. So this first question is actually going to be for a prize. We ask that if you know the answer to the question, that you enter it into the chat, and we have someone monitoring the chat. What percentage of your income should be distributed between living expenses, finance stuff, and fun stuff? And there are actually 3 answers to this. So and I'll repeat it. What percentage of your income should be distributed between living expenses, finance stuff, and fun stuff?
Farida, we have a winner.
Okay.
The first person to answer the question correctly is Kimberly Arrington, and the answer was 60, 20, 20.
Excellent. Congratulations, Kimberly. Okay, I'll turn it back to you, Kenita.
Thank you. And do let me know if you want me to stop sharing when you do the question. So let me know. So the next conversation will be about managing your credit. And again, like was mentioned before, we may know a lot of this. I'm going to put my timer on so I can make sure I'm on time. We may know a lot of this, right? But it's about taking action. Are you implementing this great information and knowledge you already know? So credit. Most people that I talk with have a great system. They'll say, we always create a credit card for these utility bills and we pay it off at the end of the month. So I want to be that person, but I know the way that my budget works, it's best not to do that, because if so, I may not pay the credit card at the end of the month. So if you're not disciplined enough to do that and have a zero balance at the end of the month, then don't do it. The points are great, but at the end of the day, you don't want to go into debt for points. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about credit scores and debt as well. But talking through your credit score, we know it's a 3-digit number, 300 to 850, and it really helps get an idea for someone to gauge how credit worthy is this individual. Are they going to pay us back on time. And we know there's a benefit to having great credit. Not only are you able to get better interest rates if you're looking for a loan, but overall you're eligible for different things as well that you may not know you're interested in at the time, but when you do want it, it is available to you. So overall, we should look for a debt that equals less than 35% of your annual income. Okay, so one thing I recognize is this is a concern for many of us Americans in general, just have a different relationship with debt than other countries. So as was noted before, I used to live in South Korea, and there's a different culture around debt. Families would save to buy with cash. So we just recognize that it's not just us, it's definitely a culture as well. So we really have to try hard to talk through improving our credit and keeping debt low. So when we look at a credit report, want to understand credit, it's also about what personal data is available, credit history of our accounts, inquiries, and also public records. It's a great practice to look at this annually. So every year, I usually do about February, go onto annualcreditreport.com, and I look for any discrepancies. So there might be you've paid consistently or you've missed a payment. One year, I used to live in California, and one year I noticed that the utility bill that was in my name when I lived in a certain apartment was still in my name once I moved, and that person hadn't paid the bill. So they, on my credit report, said I was delinquent. I would not have known that had I not reviewed my credit report. So this is not my score. This is just the report. So often people think of, I just want my score to be high, but it's also what's in your report that is pulled when you're looking to buy a home or to buy an investment property. So definitely encourage all of us to stay informed. So when we think about the score, the FICO score just summarizes your credit risk, gives you a snapshot of the report, and gives you an idea of how the range changes over time. So what's interesting to know now is there are now credit cards that will give you your score on your statement, or if you log in online, they'll show you your score. So you don't have to pay for the score as you used to. So if you haven't looked at that before, take a look at your credit card online statement or the app, if you will, or website that you generally go to, and see if they're able to give you a credit score. So if you go online and get your report, you have your score for free. There's no money out of pocket to do this annually as just a health checkup. So as we all know, there are 3 bureaus, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. The numbers are different. So you really have to be mindful of how they are different. So for example, getting a car loan or lease, which entity looks at which score, and monitor those in advance before you go into the institution to ask for credit or to make a transaction. This is key, really important, how the FICO score breaks down. And many don't realize it's not just about paying on time. Let me go back. Not just about paying on time, but it's also the amount that you owe. So if you have multiple credit cards, maybe 3 or 4, and you have over 30% of the max available on one card and 0 balances on all the other cards, then that's seen as a negative on your credit report and score because you have maxed out or nearly maxed out one card. So it's better to either have a small amount on the different cards versus over 30% of the balance available on a specific card. So make sure you're aware of how much you owe on each of your cards and try to stay under the 30%. A few ways I wanted to share about increasing your score. Again, paying things on time, making sure you're caught up. And I like automation. So if I'm able to pay things automatically, then I know I don't have to rely on my memory to do a lot of these transactions. So this piece is really key. When we look at don't open any unnecessary cards. I was at Sam's Club the other day getting shopping for the kids, and they always ask, do you want to open the credit card? You'll save yourself this much money. And we understand they get points, they get bonuses for asking that. And then another one if you open it. And why is that? Because they make so much money off of interest. I'll say that again. They make so much money off of interest. So sometimes we don't realize there's an entire industry that's created around how do we market credit cards to get individuals to buy and purchase on them and accumulate more debt, because it's an industry. If I look at my lowest APR on my credit card, it may be 15%. But let's think, what are we making in our bank accounts? Is it nearly 2%? No. So we want to think about, who are we paying first? Are we paying our credit card company, or are we paying ourselves? And I want all of us to say ourselves at the next conversation, during the next conversation, or work towards that point. All right, I'll pause here for another set of questions.
Well, before I get to the questions, I'd like to ask the audience, are there any questions that you have of Kenita regarding credit or budget and planning? If you do, you can raise your hand or place your question in the chat. Okay, it looks like we have Adrienne King.
Hi, Kenita.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Great job so far.
Thank you.
I just want to ask you to, if you could just take a moment to elaborate, because you touched on it briefly, but not sure if everyone knows. You talked about the 3 different companies that do your credit, and that each of them run your credit for different reasons. Are you able to elaborate on that just a little bit as to what Experian does versus Equifax or TransUnion?
Great question. So, I was just going to say that, as we discussed, they all are just a little different. And some of them are really focused on, for example, if you get an auto loan, or if you're getting a home loan, or if you're just getting a general credit card at the Macy's or any other store. But they all have very different goals, if you will. I don't know the specifics of how they are focused in any one industry or not, but I know Frida May and some others on the line who really work closely with clients in their credit, but would love to open the floor for this to be another learning opportunity from others too.
Great, thank you. Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Frida, I'm sorry.
I just saw Bernetta Washington had a question as well.
And hello.
Hi.
I had a question regarding the budget template that you showed. Is that available?
Yes, so I plan to share my presentation with Rita, and I would assume they would send it out, but I'll let the organizers comment on that. Sorry.
Great, because it seems to be just that, even at just the first glance, it's so clear that even myself, who I took an accounting class in school, but after a week, my eyes just glazed over. It seems like you could really get your hands around it. And it's something that I could really use and even help my little cousins, my younger cousins with, who are in this process, use that to help them. Thank you
Absolutely.
so much.
My pleasure. And one thing I'll add is I feel that parents, when I talk to parents, they say, oh, Kenita, I remember before I had children, you'll learn, wait till you have kids. This budget will go out of the window. And I can see how that could happen. But one thing I would just encourage us to do is make a line item. And I talk to Bella and Madison about this all the time, because one thing, if I think about, I have worked with clients from all cultural backgrounds, and I've noticed certain clients and cultures talk through costs with their children, but I never remember my parents talking to me about what things cost. I know they told me to turn off the light so I don't have a high electricity bill, but I never looked at an electricity bill until I had my first apartment. So if we look at, and it's digital now, but if we look at training and teaching our children early and not hiding things from them, they will be more informed young adults and have the opportunity to make better decisions. But if they don't know from the beginning, they don't have the opportunity to make better decisions. So one thing I encourage you to do is we're looking at this utilities or this expense section, housing, show them what a mortgage statement looks like. First, that's going to tell them you need to be a homeowner. That's number one. Number two, it's going to say what's interest on my mortgage versus interest on my credit card. We're going to talk about utilities. Why do I say turn off the water? Or why do I say turn off the light? Because we pay these expenses, and the less that we use, the better or less that we pay. Student loans. Why do we save in an account for you so you don't have these loans to pay when you graduate? What's the trade-off of going to one school versus another? But if we don't expose them to honest conversations, they will not be able to have the opportunity, I should say, to make as an informed decision as they could had we simply shared with them. Are there any other questions?
Yes, there are 2 questions in the chat, and we will answer those 2 and then get back into the presentation and continue to drop some great knowledge to our guests. The first one, I've been told that it's a negative to have a zero balance on my credit cards for a long time. Is that true? And how does carrying no balance affect credit card holders?
So one thing I hear that often. So one thing I look at is if you have a zero balance for a long time, a few things may happen. Some companies may just eliminate, so they may close your card due to inactivity. And you don't want that to happen, especially if it's a long-standing card, because that's going to have a long history about how you are paying your bills on time and managing your debt. So one thing I recommend is if you have multiple cards and you don't need them all, think about what is your longer standing card and decide if you need it. If you have a long standing card versus a shorter standing card, keep the long one, of course, because I find that if you have a zero balance on 7 cards, you have to figure out, do you need those 7 cards first off? And if you don't, try to close the ones that you have had for the least amount of time. And that's not just for just better practices, but it's also protecting you against fraud. We've noticed that there's an uptick in inactive cards that you just don't look at the statements, you don't get alerts, and that's very easy for someone to have a charge that you just don't notice because you don't look at the card, you don't use it yourself. So there's also a protection there as well. Carrying a zero balance can at times hurt your credit score, but if you have an activity and pay it off, then that's going to help you improve it. So you may have one small expense or once per quarter, once per year, some activity, and then you pay it off. That's better. But just having a zero balance and not using it over time does open you and your family up to risk because of the fraud that we see so rampant nowadays.
Okay. And it looks like that may have answered one of the other questions regarding closing zero card balances. So you did a great job with that. The last question before we go back into the presentation, how does consolidation of your credit cards affect your credit score?
So I believe that you might be transferring debt. So you may have 2 cards and you have a balance on both, but you're going to consolidate the debt. That's generally a strategy to try to help you pay off debt more quickly. And the benefit is usually there's 0% for a certain period of time, usually a year or 2. And I think that it's a great opportunity if you have a plan. And they say, if you don't have a plan, you really are giving yourself a 50-50 shot. Will I make it or will I not? And usually when I see someone consolidating debt, it's so that they can pay less interest. But I want you to think about not only paying less interest, but reducing or canceling the debt, paying it off. So if you transfer over $5,000 from one card to another to take advantage of 0% interest, then you should have a plan of 5,000 divided by 12 or 5,000 divided by 24. However many months you have to pay that off to get the 0% interest, that should be your goal. It shouldn't be, I just want to get less interest for this period of time, because as soon as that 12-month period takes place, or as soon as that 24-month period takes place, you will automatically go up to the highest interest rate that they can charge you, generally well over 20% on that debt, well over 20% on the debt. So if you don't have a plan to pay it off during that time period, then I don't recommend transitioning the debt. It's okay if you don't get 100%, at least try to get to 80%. Because again, in those, if you have a balance left after that great grace period is over, and they've done studies, just don't think we're up against other people who are trying to pay off. They've done studies to see how many people transfer debt and don't pay it off in the time that you have 0 interest. So that's a huge passion of mine. So we're up against professionals that want us to accumulate debt. We have to think about it that way because it's an industry. Okay, so all debt isn't bad. Just we're talking about debt already. When you think about good debt, don't get bamboozled on this car loan piece. Student loans, mortgages, I think that they're technically good debt because you can deduct the interest. So taxes are the key of everything. So if I have a loan on my home and I have the interest that's deductible, that's a benefit to me. If I have a student loan with interest that's deductible, that's a benefit to me. But remember, there's certain income limits where your interest is no longer deductible. So you have to be mindful of those rules. A car loan, it's a necessary in certain parts of the world. New Jersey's one of them to have a car, but you really want to look at a car that you can afford. And it's good debt if you are paying your bills on time and it's something that you can afford. But if you're balancing an expensive car that you may not have the money to maintain and sustain, then it is not a good debt. All right. So when we think about bad debt, it's the obvious, right? It's credit cards, it's definitely cash or paycheck loans, but there are many different types of loans that I have come across lately. And if I look at the interest rate, that generally gives me an idea of, is this a loan that's really trying to take advantage of me? Or is this a loan that's helping me to build a legacy? So education, as we know, is a way to transition into different careers, advancements, etc. A home and home ownership in general is as well. But when we look at credit cards, that's not really moving me forward. However, there's a way to manage that and take advantage of other opportunities. And please stay away from the paycheck advance loans if possible, as they're really predatory lending. So when we look at keeping debt in balance, the budget, as just the question was earlier, is the start to it all. And if you are not able to charge things on your credit and pay it off right away, then don't subscribe to that way of budgeting. Just use your debit card and use the cash that you have to manage what I call a 0 budget. My income, my savings is an expense. My 401k, my 529 for the girls, our miscellaneous savings for vacation, the summer camp, gifts and travel. So all of those have their own line items, but it's in our budget. So at the end of the month, we know we'll have a small buffer that goes into our short-term savings. We want to pay our credit cards off in full. If not, have a plan. Every month I'm paying a little bit extra, or I'm doing something on the side to get more income to pay it off. Very important. Working on paying high interest rates first is also one of the keys, and snowball effects is one common way of paying off debt, and always paying more than your minimum. So wanted to see if there's any questions that you wanted to take, Frida, or not just yet.
There was one more question that did come up. Do you recommend secured credit cards for young adults working to establish credit?
Sure. So that's actually a great option. And another way to build their credit, you can add them to your credit card and they don't need a credit card. So you can say, I have one card that I use every so often. I can put my 18-year-old or my child, not even 18, by the way, it can be younger than that, my child's name on the card, but make sure you have good saving and spending habits on that card. But that's going to allow them to have a credit history. You're paying the card off every month. You're maybe purchasing some things and then paying it off, but that's also going to help them build their credit. And they don't know, it's not their card, but it's just an alignment with your credit history that they'll now assume from that one card. When we think about mortgage debt and student loans, I find that this is one hurdle that a lot of people struggle with, especially student loans. So if we're able to think about, are you in a public service role and loan forgiveness with the governmental programs is an option, then I would reevaluate getting engaged in that program. I have spoken to a lot of clients that said, Kenita, that doesn't even work anymore. They don't do that, but they have changed. They have really changed how that program is managed and also how it's monitored. So I would encourage you to reevaluate, take a look at it, and call for yourself. Just don't take someone else's information or recommendation to see if you or your children would qualify.
Awesome. Those are all the questions that we had in the chat. And just to do a quick temperature check, we have about an hour, but I will do one prize question really quickly.
Okay.
So if you guys can put your answers in the chat, that would be great. What are the 2 greatest influencers on your FICO score? Let's see if anyone remembers. Okay. Right, Tanya, are you able to,
Okay, let's see if this is the right answer.
I could give the answer, and if you could just let us know who the first person was. Can you see the answer?
Yes, it would
Okay.
be Nakima Stewart, the length of credit and credit utilization. What was this credit history and the amount you owe? Then we have Tamika Webster, time and payments. Looks like that's it.
Okay.
And the correct answer is credit history and the amount you owe.
So I will defer to our presenter. Which answer is most close to those 2 answers?
All right, let me go back and look at the chat then. Let's see.
One is length of credit and credit utilization, and the other is time and payments.
I would say time and payments.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say time and payments. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
So Miss
Perfect.
Webster, you're the winner.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. So we have just a little over an hour. So we will go back into the presentation and again, continue to take notes and continue to learn. Thank you, Kenita.
No problem. So just as we kind of prepare for the next slide, we really want to think about what do we learn thus far? So a lot of the conversations are fundamental. They're really building blocks, looking at budgeting, looking at our credit, looking at our debt. And from there, we look at what's the opportunity. But this is not a conversation about how do we do better. It's how do we all do better, right? So it's a conversation about how do we help our children move forward? How do we help our communities move forward as well? So when we think about what that means, it's also investing. And for sometimes I don't think we recognize this, but for years we could not invest in the market, in the stock market, because you needed a broker, a person to give you access to investing. And if that, we just let that simmer for a minute, talk about inequality. You could not invest in the market. So I have clients with stocks of this and that, but we couldn't invest without a broker. So when I think about how we can change this and all of the new technology that's been presented, it's exciting. There's a lot of great opportunities, but we still have to know the principles, the beginning. And when we have our the conversations with our children and the next generation, nieces and nephews, we want to educate them as well. It might be different than how we invest, but we must educate them. So when we think about education, you all are here today. That's first step. You know, it's important for you to learn and you're committed and finding a way to do that. The other piece is setting a goal. So I may say, my goal is to have a home for every child I have and a home for myself when I retire. And that's a part of the legacy. I don't want to just have a home. I want them to know how to manage that home, how to generate income from that home, how to continue to invest in that home. And while they're living their own lives, building their careers, they have the foundation of positive and good money management practices so that they can build on the wealth that I've started to build. We have to know our style. Are you aggressive? Are you more of a tangible real estate investor? Or are you comfortable with the markets? Or are you doing a bit of both? And overall, how do you monitor your investments? And that's not just monitoring your portfolio, but if you have a rental property, you should pay attention to what's selling around you. You have your home, you should pay attention to what is selling in your community where you live. So just this is a teaser. We had a conversation with the leadership, and there's a lot that we can talk through in investing. And this is what I do daily, my living and breathing. So I have a lot to share. And we're going to share on a higher level today because we do only have an hour. But we want this to be engaging, and we want to be able to share on a deeper level at the next session. So and I said I was committed to helping and scheduling and coming back for that too. So when we look at the sector breakdowns of the stock market, it's important to know that when we think of how did the market do today? And if you all have been paying attention to the news or NPR, wherever you get your news, you recognize that the invasion of Ukraine started a few days ago, and the market had a significant drop, and in the same day had a rally. So I stop and pause there because when we think about the stock market, a lot of people say, oh, it's gambling. And I hate to hear that. It's not. It's a structure. It's a cycle. You just have to learn about it and pay attention. So we're going to talk about and help you do that. All right. So we're starting with the sectors. In the market, there are different sectors. One sector is financials. So those are your banks. That's your insurance company. You may think of financials as a Visa or MasterCard. Those are all financials. Materials, lumber, copper. Those are the markets that make up that part of the sector. Real estate, commercial real estate, residential real estate, the home builders, they're in that group. Healthcare, United Healthcare, all of the healthcare companies that you might think of are in that healthcare group. Industrials, Honeywell, companies like that, which Deere, they build, if you will, our country and are a part of the foundational economy. Consumer staples, these are things we have to use. We can't go without. Kraft foods, it might be Pepsi, Cola, Dasani water, Tyson chicken. All those are companies. We go to the grocery store or we go to Home Depot, or Home Depot is not as fresh staple, but these are staples that we have to use. Toilet tissue. Those are parts of our economy that are very consistent. Clorox, Procter & Gamble, because we have to use those. Consumer discretionary. These are types of stocks that are not necessarily things we need, but things that we like. It could be a Michael Kors or a Vans or Tiffany or Macy's, not such a great company, but sometimes. But when you think about how do we differentiate, where should we invest? We start with investing in what you know. To telecommunications, Verizon, Comcast, Energy, ExxonMobil, BP, even solar companies, utilities. PSE&G is a stock. It's a public company that I have that we can all buy. Information technology, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Apple. So when you think about the market, don't think about it as one entity, but it's broken down into these sectors. And why is that important? If I were to consider information technology, we can't do anything, it seems, without technology. We couldn't meet and have this conversation today. So we may have fluctuations in technology, but it's a critical part of how we live. Consumer staples, we have to eat. So we know there are companies like Tyson, companies like other meat providers or packaging companies that will always be a part of our economy. We may not always be able to buy a car or buy washing machines and different items like that, but discretionary items are also very important. So when we think about the market, definitely think about each of these sectors and how they perform, not just the market in general. So one thing we think about, and I probably focus a lot on, is that the market fluctuates. And the emotional roller coaster of investing is so critical. So if you think about this visual here, we may say over the last 10 years, we've had a bull market, right? Meaning the market has been very strong. And if you think about how a bull and a bear fight, the bull fights by pulling its horns up. And that's why we say a bull market is a higher market. A bear fights by putting his or her paw down. So the bear market means that's a down market. So when we think about a bull market, markets are going up. We seem confident. This is when everyone's interested, even those who stayed away from the market, they're hearing about all the money people are making. And then euphoric, when people are saying, I can just be a day trader. I don't have to work. I can just put my money in the market and let it ride. I can quit my job and we can go on vacations. And then what happens? The rest of the market cycle, things are going down. People are nervous. I don't know what's going on. And if you think about 2018, this trade war with China, the government shut down for a number of days, the market's starting to go down. And then you become desperate. You're trying to figure out, should I start selling? Is it too late? Have I missed my opportunity? And generally you find that most people start selling or between the nervous and desperate section. And right here, before you get to the defeated, this is the worst time to sell. So I had a number, so my last week has been just nonstop because I've been talking to clients about, remember the market's a cycle. We're going to go through these things. I remember when the pandemic began, March Madness was canceled. Everyone was trying to sell everything. And not everyone, but investors that maybe were new investors and not well seasoned, they were trying to sell. But you have to remember that I like buying on sale. It's difficult to do that. That's why you often work with a professional manager. But if you're investing with your gut, you may not want to buy here because it's difficult. But I deployed a lot of money on the day that war was announced, even though it's called an invasion. And what happened? There's some stocks that we bought that are up 25% because you're investing on one of the worst days. But you have to have a plan before the worst day comes. It's not figuring it out on the day of. So I just want you all to think about how you prepare yourself for this level of investments. And you're doing it already. You're in your 401k or maybe you have other accounts. But if you don't take away anything from this investment section, please take away the managing your emotions during down markets and knowing the rebound will come, but you have to know what you own. Not everything, not all boats will rise, but if you're investing in quality companies, then that's the smart way to do so and it will rise. So then things turn around. People called Friday. The market looks like it's a great, but if we had invested on that initial, as it Wednesday, Thursday, the returns would have been more significant. So just remember, the markets are going to work in cycles, okay? And there is risk in the stock market. And it's okay to take more risk in certain parts of your portfolio and less risk in others because of your time horizon. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So again, like I was saying, the bull market, the bull's horns go up when he or she fights. The bear claws go down. So that's why you have a bull or a bear market. Okay, I'm going to pause for questions really quickly before I jump into this, if there are any. If not, I can.
We don't see any in the chat,
Okay.
and it looks like we have no hands raised at this time.
Okay, fantastic. All right. So when we think about mutual funds, that's the most common way that we're looking to invest because it's in our 401k, they're in our 529 accounts, they're in our 403bs, deferred compensation plans, TSP plans. It's a basket of investments. So if you look at this basket here, we have Wheat Thins, Triscuits, all these are public companies. Heinz Mayonnaise, you can Google them and find their parent company. So I may have if it's just making up an example, I may buy Coca-Cola or Frito-Lay, or Mondelez is a company that owns Frito-Lay chips. So if I know in the beginning of the pandemic, people are home, they're eating, they're ordering, we can figure out what investments are going to go up. Because an investment is simply, where are we putting our money? Where are we investing and buying? If the companies manage well and we're buying from that company, more than likely the profits will go up. So a stock and the investment is going forward, how are we anticipating the growth? All right, so when we think about mutual funds, they're professionally managed, meaning you can't necessarily decide what's in the basket. The basket is as it is. There's a professional manager that decides if we're putting back the Triscuits or if we're putting back one of the canned goods. But the basket is full, as you see, and that inherently provides diversification. So we're not just buying Coca-Cola, for example, but we're buying a number of other companies that will balance the risk of buying one company. So when we look at the investment vehicles, we want to know, what's the purpose of this mutual fund? Are we going to buy a fund that's for growth? Or are we buying a fund that's just technology? Are we buying a fund that's just financials? So there are very specific types of mutual funds, and they're general types of mutual funds. But the main thing to take away from a mutual fund is that you're generally automatically diversified, because you could have a number of individual stocks, in the basket, and you don't have to choose them. You have Microsoft, Apple, and you could also have Visa, Tesla, versus buying each of those individually. You have a basket of all those stocks. One thing I want you all to think about is when your children or young people are investing, encourage them to buy mutual funds, but also buy stocks that they're interested in. Because they may, and I'll share an example, a client of mine, we asked her 8-year-old daughter, what are your friends wearing at school? What are some companies that you like? And she said Adidas. And Adidas, this was before Adidas was really popular and everyone started wearing them. And we bought Adidas in her UTMA, Uniform Trust to Minors account. And that is one of the best holdings that her family has, because they invested before adults started talking about Adidas. And I love it, because I always talk to her about, as a woman, you're an investor too. This is your money. You'll work one day. It's your responsibility to pay attention. There is market risk, but you know Adidas. You see Adidas has the quality of clothes you like. So investing in what you know is so essential. I just wanted to stop a little bit here and talk about diversification. And this means and a lot of people say, I want something safe. So there's always market risk. You know, we go to war, or Ukraine is invaded. That's a risk no one can control. It doesn't mean Apple's iPhone won't be great. It doesn't mean I won't buy another pair of Nikes, but there's always a certain level of risk. And then there's unique risk to the industry. So if Nike has a lot of bad press or their quality has decreased substantially, and that's unique risk to the company or the industry. So I want you to think about risk in two ways. But when you think about it, know that you can reduce your risk by having different companies in your portfolio. It's called diversification. I'm talking a lot of the details now, and I don't want to spoonful feed you, but I want you to know and have really good knowledge about investing. Frida, I know you have a.
There was a question that came in about the recent controversy with Peloton and the investors wanting the CEO to step down. Can you explain how this has affected the market performance of a seemingly popular company?
Good question. So when we think about risk, as I mentioned, there's the market risk and then there's the firm risk. So when we think about a firm's risk, Peloton, and that's a great example because I have a lot of clients that say, oh, let's buy Peloton, but it's not just what's popular, but how is the company run? And what happens is as companies become very popular, sometimes management kind of loses focus, right? They think we're doing well, we're great, we're making money, but maybe the management style isn't as focused or intentional as it used to be because they're just enjoying the growth. And what may happen then is some of the standard operating procedures are not followed as closely, and or his or her personal decisions are maybe not in alignment with the company's morals or values. So we have to remember that there's we call CEO risk in a company. You think about Apple and not Apple, Amazon and Bezos's divorce and then his girlfriend. All those are had bad headlines is what I call it. But the stock goes down because then there's a question about management. And it might not be that sales are down, but the stock is a future forecast. So if management is not doing well, that means we are concerned about the future of the company because management has displayed that they're making poor decisions. So we're concerned about not what Peloton is doing today, but maybe Peloton now is distracted and maybe they won't have the great instructors that they have anymore, or maybe they won't provide the benefits to their staff. And as we know, we're as good as our team. And then the product is now not as strong as it used to be. So that's an indication of how the market or investors believe the future of Peloton will be, not where it is today. Hope that helps.
So in something like this, I guess you would just advise folks to just pay attention to if the stocks are starting to fall, then that might be the good time to sell sort of thing. So it just allows us to keep our eye on the possibility of what this stock can do.
So that's a good point. Sometimes you buy on that news if you're committed to the company, and sometimes you would sell when you make your money. So that's another thing. You want to also balance. You don't hold on to a stock forever just to hold on to it. Sometimes you take your profits to the side and you keep up a little portion of the company so you can diversify your investments. So Peloton, if you believe in Peloton, then you still may hold on to Peloton, but that shouldn't be the only company you own because there's so much risk in just the one stock. So you may buy Peloton, you may buy Microsoft, you may buy Apple or, very different company. But the idea is that you have different companies that you are aware of that you buy and invest in today so that you're diversified. And Peloton is about competition too. So is it easy to recreate that? And I don't believe so. I think the machines have been around for a long time, but the community that they've created, that's the value. So it's really figuring out if they can continue to keep their quality high, figure out management, or another investor come in that's really focused on driving business, then that's a good thing. But there is a very unique benefit to what Peloton has. That's very difficult to recreate.
So we do have a hand raised, Adrienne King.
Well, as you can see, Kenita, I am excited about this information you're sharing. Very engaging. And my question for you is, as we talk about about these different risks. We always hear that there's comes a point in your life where the risk should be not as great, so you should have more of a balance.
Right.
What can you share with us about that? You know, young adults being more taking a bigger risk versus a more senior person. Is there like a certain age you should say that, or will you talk about retirement where that is more prevalent?
Great question. And you must have saw my next slide. You saw it in advance, right? So
Ahead of
you're
myself, right?
you're absolutely right. And that's important because, and first, before you even get that, we do have some retirement conversations in a second, but you have to think about what you're investing for. So I have one bucket of money here, and that's for retirement. So you're right, I need to become more moderate over time. But I may have a center bucket that's more so for opportunities or investment opportunities. So I may be more growth oriented here because I'm not relying on this money to allow me to live comfortably to age 100. This may be a legacy bucket of investments that I intend to leave to my heirs. So I can invest differently there. I may have another bucket that's for a specific investment. Maybe I have a grandchild that was just born and I am quietly, secretly committed to funding their education. So you may invest differently with all these three buckets. So your time horizon, how long you have until this goal is reached, will help you determine your risk, your inherent risk. Who are you? And just because people are young doesn't mean that they're risky people or risky investors, but they do have to take on a certain level of risk to reach a very long-term goal, such as retirement. So risk has a couple of components. But just to answer your direct question, when you think about a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old saving for retirement that may be another 30 years away or 40 years away, they do want to be more aggressive because they're further away from their goal, just as it states. And they're comfortable with taking risks. But there could be, and I have a lot of my engineers, they're not really aggressive. They're numbers people. So they may be far away from their goal, but they're kind of comfortable with taking risks. So they may be a moderately aggressive person. So it just depends on your personal style and how far you are from your investments. And then when you think about having those different buckets, you can have, like I said, different styles for each. But what's consistent through all of those buckets is your personal investment style. What's different is how you will use those monies down the line. As you get more conservative, you see on the right-hand side, I still have a while before I reach my goal. I'm okay with some risk. And this is inherent to how can you survive that emotional roller coaster? So can you afford to take a dip and you're retiring next year? But recall the fact my husband's grandmother, I call, she lived to be 105. So we may retire at 60 or 65 or even 70, and we have to live another 30 sometimes years in retirement. So you can't be on the far right conservative because you have 30 years that this money has to work for you. So when I talk to clients about retiring, and this is difficult because the conversation has been, oh, you need to be conservative when you retire. But that's when our life expectancy was not as long as it is today. So I don't want clients to think about missing the mark because they're too conservative in the beginning of their retirement years and forget that we're planning to age at least 95, unless there's some family history that changes that. But with modern medicine and technology, it's often expected that we'll live to about age 100, which is kind of crazy to say, but it's already happening. All right. So when we think about what type of investor are we, that's going to change over time. And we want to make sure when we build our portfolio, and I'm so glad that you're talking about real estate the next session, because that's a part of your portfolio. If we think of our greatest assets, it's a property, or often our home, and then also our retirement account. So you want to think about the number of years that you have until you need to use the monies and how long you need to use it, right? So if I retire at 65, then I still need to use it for another 30 plus years. My risk tolerance inherently what other sources of income that we have, and then overall our debt. So I know we are at 12, 17. And this is why I love this, as you all know, but there is some great content. So I want to just stop there for a second. And again, I am committed to coming back so you can really get your hands dirty and getting some really good knowledge about both investing and retirement. But let's stop for the question.
Okay, there, we did get a question in the chat. Are ETFs safer to purchase in terms of risk?
So the answer is, so ETFs, exchange traded funds, are very similar to a mutual fund. So you saw that basket, right? What's different? It's the active manager. So remember, the first line was a professional money manager. What they've done in the market, one thing I love, that's why I went to NJIT. I wanted to work with the coders because finance is very heavily driven by technology. I can meet other advisors at conferences. So what I do is, you think about the cost of a mutual fund. So the market evolved to say, let's create a mutual fund with less costs or lower costs. And that's an ETF. There's no person really changing a lot of the investments in the basket. You buy the basket, it may change a little bit, but it's not going to change a lot. So the change, buying one company, selling another, buying another company, that's a cost, a transaction cost. So if I lower the buys and the sells, that's less I'm spending. If I take out the active manager, that's one or a team of people I no longer have to pay. So that's how the industry has evolved to create other less expensive solutions to invest. And it also addresses diversification. If you look at an ETF, they may have, a few hundred stocks in them. And you can even buy ETFs that are self-driving ETFs or electric vehicle ETFs or technology ETFs. So there are specific sector ETFs too. But I like ETFs as well. Those are called passive because there's no one actively doing a lot of things, but we use ETFs as well.
Are ETFs the ones we get off of like Robinhood or Acorn?
Mm-hmm. And the ETFs are really everywhere. Fidelity, E-Trade, it just means it's an exchange traded fund, or index fund is very similar to an ETF. Low cost, not a lot of changes, so that the investor doesn't pay more in fees.
Awesome. All right, so we are going to ask a prize question. I hope you guys are ready and your fingers are ready to start typing, but name 3 investment styles. This should be easy because you just went over the slide. Name 3 investment styles. There are 5 of them. Are you guys typing? Oh.
All right, we got a winner. Jessica Keel, aggressive, moderate, whoops, coming through quickly. Aggressive, moderate, and what was the last one that you said? Jessica. Well, my cursor changed, but Jessica Keel is our winner.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Congratulations, Jessica.
Thank you. As a true mother, trying to make sure the girls got to their music class. All right, so this is the fun part. And I know I'm mindful of time. When we think about retirement planning, I like to just kind of break the ceiling. Retirement will not look like my retirement of grandparents, parents. We are shifting this space, and I am so excited that people are willing to take the risks that we just weren't able to take before or didn't know about before. So you may have a few rental properties, you may take a break in your career to travel or do other things, but it's all about a plan and being fulfilled in what you do. And I'm a strategy person, so I say, let's figure it out. Why limit yourself? So when we think about retirement planning, who, what, where, when, why, how, and how much. So again, this is a high level. I'm going to brace myself. I won't jump in too deep, but I just want to talk through an exact scenario. I recently spoke with a family that they're about 5 to 7 years from retirement, and they both have great savings, good savers, 401k, TSP plan, and I built in their financial plan a vacation home. And they told me that they want to stay close to their children who are in their 20s, 30s. And I also built in wedding gifts, 10,000 each. And I also built in, they said they will stay in Jersey. I said, all right. So I'm going to build in a Delaware vacation home. And I say that to say, if we don't push ourselves to dream and work with someone to help us figure out if this can be a part of our plan, we will never fulfill it. So when we put their financial plan together, we know who it was, the two individuals, what they were retiring at 65, where they told me New Jersey, when, again, 65, why they've been saving, they've been able to pay down their debt, they own their home, how they knew they're not big travelers. I was actually trying to push them, travel more. Why are you having this certain, travel budget? And then how much? So what do you spend today? Your monthly expenses, not just your income. What do you want to spend in retirement? So often those are, the rule of thumb is 80% of what your income is today is what you should try to replace in retirement. But I say, why 80%? I don't want to live off of 80%. I want to try to aim for 100% and scale back if I need to. So I often try to replace 100% of your income. And then I'll show you what 80% looks like. But if you're spending a lot today and you anticipate spending the same amount in retirement, then you may have to save more, because the Social Security string or Social Security part of the stool or leg of the stool is not going to be as substantial. If you don't spend a lot, 4,000, 5,000, and not including your mortgage, by the way, these are just regular expenses, then maybe you don't need to save as much because you don't spend a lot. So everyone's retirement picture is going to look different. You may have rental income, and that rental income supports one leg of the stool. You may decide, I ran this show while I was young, I need a property manager now that I'm retired. So you won't have as high of an income from that property because you have another expense, a property manager. So we really think about, what does retirement look like for you? Are you retiring early? Are you traveling a lot? Are you just enjoying being home with your grandchildren? Some people say, my grandchildren will be fine. I want to live this type of life, but it's different for everyone. So when we think about retirement planning, I want you all to stop and really answer these questions. Who was retiring? It's just me. My husband and I plan separately, or we're planning together, or my partner and I plan separately, or it's just me. What do you want to do? Where do you want to do it? If you're retiring in a less expensive, New Jersey is high on the list. If you're retiring in a less expensive state, I have a lot of clients that go to South Carolina, they go to Florida some, but sometimes you think they're less expensive, but they're getting to be very close to what it costs to live in New Jersey. And how long do you have until you want to retire? And then why are you retiring? You may decide to work longer because you absolutely love what you do. You have the flexibility. So you don't have to retire just because you're that age. But that plays into a part of how much you want to save. And then how are you going to manage all of this? So Social Security, and another homework, go to ssa.gov. ssa.gov, Social Security Administration.gov. And when you do that, you're going to, if you don't have an account already, log in. And this is for individuals not collecting yet. Sorry, I didn't say that. You need to see what Social Security is telling you you will receive at age 65 or even 62. More than likely, you all have a full retirement age of 67. If you go on ssa.gov and they say you're getting, let's make up a number, $1,500 a month, and you know you need $5,000 or $6,000 a month, then between personal savings and your pension or passive income, you need to have about $6,000, because Social Security will not be enough. So you really have to build your strategy based on what retirement looks like for you. And please do not forget to add in a property manager. I've spoken to families that have properties, but forgot that one day they couldn't manage them themselves, and their children may not be interested in doing that. So please don't assume that the children will be in line with where you want them to be. All right. So when we think about those 3 legs, the saving component is going to be the dominant place that you're going to invest and spend time in and focus on, because that's where the gold will be. Your IRA, your Roth, SEP IRA. So these are many retirement plan options, and they all work a little differently. Some are before taxes, meaning you're going to put money in the vehicle. It reduces your tax bill today. But I always say, don't forget, your money is going to be invested and grow. So when you pay the taxes, it will be on a higher number. It will be on a larger account balance. So we really want to think about a balance between, pre-tax and after tax if we can, which is a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k. And I had a lot more to share, and by the wisdom of the committee, they said, let's reduce this, Kenita, and we're going to have another conversation because there is so much more here. And we know that our community needs this information, and they want it. And they may have wealth managers. They just want to make sure they're talking about the right things too. So are there any questions? And I know we're at 12:28.
Okay, we're just taking a look in the chat and on our Facebook Live.
Sure. So while you're doing that, I would just want to encourage business owners. Again, I have had a ton more slides, but business owners, you have a really unique opportunity, which is exciting for me as a business owner, leveraging retirement plans and executive retirement plans on top of your traditional retirement plan to really strategize and manage taxes even with your business and these different plan options. With young people, so if you have a business and you have children or nieces and nephews, they could be under 18 as well. Hire them in the summer and make them, don't ask, open a Roth IRA. And as a young person, they can make a contribution to a Roth IRA and build their wealth before they even turn 18. And that's after taxes. So there are many, and they could use it to buy their first home, for education as well. But when we think about an economic legacy, it's definitely one that doesn't have an age restriction. We can start when they're young.
I think that's a very, very good point. I mean, I think you said a number of things about how we start to engage our youth, our children, into understanding how our finances work. As I mentioned earlier, we talked about how to protect our legacy, but how do we build it? And we do all this work so that we can leave it, but we're leaving it to people that we're not necessarily educating them on what they need to do. So if I took away anything, it's just for me to be extremely more diligent in terms of, opening up the books to the family sort of thing, and not just managing it on my own. One of the things that you mentioned too is about putting our children on our credit cards. My oldest son is 22 and he checked his credit score. He was like, I have a 760 credit score and I don't have credit. And I'm like, well, one of the things that I did as your mother was put you on and start to, give you some credit history so that you can have that footing. So I'm glad that you mentioned that as well, because we need to learn and understand how we can start giving our children more leverage when it's time for them to embark on using their credit or understanding how money works. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. And what's one thing to add, how does he continue to maintain that great credit score, right? So he needs to know what you did, because he could have opened his eyes to a 300, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's about how did mom and dad make decisions so that you would have that 700 plus credit score? What could we have done, which would have given you a lower credit score? Because we have to see both sides of the coin.
Right.
We want to teach them first, because if
Right.
we don't teach them, they will learn, and it's not necessarily the right thing or the right habits that they'll learn.
Correct. That's very true. So, yeah, and we started to have those conversations. So, but it is important, very important, because like you said, no one is teaching us and we're kind of learning, and they're not always the easiest learning experiences for us. So thank you. It looks like, yes, we have Adrienne King again, who she is into it, and I'm loving it. I am absolutely loving it. So go ahead and take the floor.
I promise this is my last question as we wrap up. I promise, at least for this series anyway. Just being a realist and looking for you, Kenita, to give us some pearls of wisdom. We know that there are many who may have joined in with us, or many who may not have joined in with us because their mindset is, guess what? It's too late for me to start doing this, or it's too late for me to start saving, or I'm right now paying Peter and Rob and Paul to make ends meet. So just some pointers, or as I said, pearls of wisdom that you could give. Is it really ever a time that's too late to invest? Or is there a time that is too early? Or is there a time where there's too little? And to those points, do you have any pearls of wisdom to offer to those mindsets or individuals who may feel that way about building their economic legacy?
Thank you for sharing that question. And it's really important because many of us feel that way. There are many people do. And the wrong answer is that it is too late. So it's never too late. But what you want to do, if you are, let's say, a few years from retirement, or I'm retiring at the end of the year, Kenita, I don't care what you say, then you need to do a couple things. Number one, if you're not collecting Social Security already, go to SSA.gov, because more than likely that's going to be your main source of, or not main, a source of income. And you need to know what it looks like. And I give you an example. I spoke to someone who is in that, I think it's too late situation. I said, nope, I want you to go online, look at the statement, see what you'll receive. And if you retire and you own your own home, then you will have your mortgage. If it's paid off, you will always have property taxes and your insurance. So build that into your budget, like we were talking through before. And then I want you to see what portion of your property taxes and homeowners insurance, and if so, mortgage, will need to come from Social Security. If that's not enough, then we need to look at what other sources of income do you have? Do you have anything saved? And the answer is no. Then let's start beginning to, number one, pay down all of your debt, or start making steps to pay down debt. Because what does that do? It frees up cash that was going to pay off debt for you to save more. And don't not save or invest until you have zero debt. You want to save some and pay off some. You have to have a dual part strategy. And then from there, you have to be open. You have to tell your family, this is where I am, and we need to have a plan. Because what happens is you internalize this concern and fear, and your family may say, okay, well, it's okay, mom, or dad, we'll figure this out. We'll have maybe someone, we'll rent out a room to our cousin, or you'll live with us. But if you don't have a plan, then you'll retire and you'll be drowning in debt. And that's what will happen, because there's no other way to pay things. So just open our eyes, we put our pride aside and say, Social Security is giving me this. I can work part-time and do this, and I'm still retired. And how do we as a family or as a village figure out the rest? But not opening up to the family about that is really discouraged, because it will come out. They love you. They don't want to see you hurt and worrying. And that debt is a silent killer, I tell you. We drive nice cars, look great. I have jeans on, no one can say, but we have to be open and honest about debt. Consignment shops and discount, we have to do whatever we can to reduce the debt, because I have seen a lot of folks that I look up to, and I see their debt, I'm thinking, oh my, I think I couldn't sleep. my hair will be falling out. So I just want us to be aware of how that can really hurt us. And it's going to go to the next, it will, it's not even a question. It will go to the next generation too, because they see what type of jobs we have and then what we drive or vacation. And there's no other way to do it but through debt. But if we say, don't do that, live modestly. And when you grow in your income and career, then move up. Don't compare yourself to other people. Then you can live a free life from debt. Consignment shops. Yes, I love that. Consignment shop, thrift stores. Yes, all those. I go to, I tell people this because they say, oh, Kenita, you go. My daughters had their snow boots from Olden Avenue. What's that? Goodwill, because they'll grow out them this season. I think they were $7. Not afraid to share it. I'm the third girl of 3. Hand-me-downs was my life. And even if I could afford it, why? A little Lysol is not going to hurt anyone. and just as long as we're okay sharing that, then we all will be free of those expectations that we have to have the best all the time.
That is very awesome. Just taking a look at, some of the comments that we have in the chat. Folks are very appreciative of the information that you have presented. It looks like we do have another question from Suzette Price. Her hand is raised. Suzette, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you. Yes, great. This was an excellent program. My question is, what are the risks of having more than one person manage, more than one financial manager at the same time? Are there pros and cons of that? Thank you.
Thank you for that, Suzette. I would recommend just figuring out what their roles are. So I have clients and they always say, Kenita, you look so young. And I say, we're a multi-generational wealth management company for a reason. When you're retired, I will be working. So you can call me and I won't be traveling with you, but I'll be working for you. And we hire advisors that are younger than me, because even my friends in their age, they need to have, my advisor will be working while I retire. So the idea is that I even do this. I have clients that have certain assets with a wealth manager. They've had a long relationship, but they're your age. Just know that. So they'll retire when you retire. And if their organization's not set up with multi-generation wealth management in mind, then you may go to a new relationship that you don't have a connection to. So we may manage the family trust or certain assets that are intended for latter investment or retirement years, or for the next generation. But then there's a relationship that's established. We have family wealth meetings. So we're talking to the kids, usually in their 40s, about, okay, this is what your parents set up, but how do you invest? What is, I'm doing that right now with a family. The kids are in the Midwest, the parents are in Lawrence, and they want to make sure they're not just leaving a legacy of assets, but a legacy of a financial partner. So they're buying the house, new baby. So we're talking about what they should do and think through as they're making those decisions. And one thing I want to ask you all to do, I didn't do this. So my firm, Master Plan Investment Group, is based in Pennington. We're not far. Please go on social media. You're already on Facebook Live, like our page. We're on LinkedIn as well. And that would help me be able to communicate other sessions that we're going to have. So our next session is on Medicare Made Simple, on the 10th of May, I want to say. But I'll definitely give, Frida all the details, but want to make sure we're supporting us too. I have a CFP for a reason. There is no other designation higher than a CFP. Then, if you think of your wealth manager, I'm a accredited investment fiduciary. And, I'm committed. I live in Trenton, work and build and invest here too. And I think it's important that, we make a commitment to support each other.
And I think that segues into one of the questions we just received: is Kenita taking new clients? So can we put your information back on the screen, and we'll make sure we also distribute it to our attendees.
Okay, will do.
So not only did we get asked, is Kenita taking new clients, we have someone who asked +1. So we have 2 people so far who are looking to get in touch with you.
I appreciate that. And also, when you're consolidating retirement assets, you know, whoever you work with, an investment fiduciary is so important because you have to figure out, all right, I have an old retirement plan here. I have this one I'm working with. Who's going to tell you the recommendation that's best for you, not for him or her? So what that means is all of our documentation, our conversations, me asking about how healthy are your parents? Have they saved for themselves? May you need to plan for supporting them in their retirement years? Or will your sisters and brothers support? All those things tie into how you plan for retirement. And we don't think about that, but those are questions you should ask and have thought through, you know, with whomever you choose to work with as your investment advisor.
Awesome. We did get another question. Do your clients have to have a minimum amount to invest or to work with you? This person, Ms. Stewart, was turned away at one firm because she didn't have enough.
Good question, Ms. Stewart. So we don't have a minimum because we have what we call a financial planning client. So with a financial plan, it's a relationship that we have to give you a real deep dive, not just a high level of are you going to make it or not, but where are you? What are some places that you need to focus on, and we can help you do that. And then if it's about investing your assets, then we talk through how that should look as well. Whether we're investing it directly, or if you have a 401k plan or an old 401k plan, we're going to suggest the investments you may choose or you should choose in that plan. Because often many people say, I want to work with you. But I say, you really need a plan. So let's do that. And that's a cost. And there's no, you don't have to feel bad. Oh, Kennedy, you're just help me. I'm not doing it. It's a structure and it's a service we offer because it's a full comprehensive financial plan. And then in that plan, we say, are we the right investment advisor for you? Or are we just going to do a plan? You invest in your E-Trade account or Fidelity because we are aware of costs too. That's what an investment fiduciary does. They don't just take the business. They make sure you're working with the right platform. And then we check in annually. We don't just start a relationship and end. We want to make sure you're staying on that course to achieve what you've shared as most important to you. Hope that answers the question.
So we may have just actually made that a +2 on top of the other folks who are asking about you taking the clients. So, all right, well, it looks like we don't have any further questions either on Facebook Live or hands raised or in the chat. So we'd like to say thank you very much for the time that you spent with us today and for imparting so much knowledge just to even get us started. And we're looking forward to you coming back and giving us more detailed information. I encourage all of the attendees to get in touch with Mrs. Bullock. She's a wealth of information. And the fact that she is a Black woman with the designation as a CFP with such lower percentages across the board for women of color as a whole, just to have this gem right in our backyard is refreshing and amazing. And I just, again, encourage everyone to reach out to her to start building your economic legacy and learning how to create generational wealth through financial planning and financial management. So thank you, Kenita.
Absolutely. And one thing I'll add, I really am, and I'm not joking with you. I had about maybe at least 7 more slides. And I said, I don't want to dilute it anymore. Let's just have another session about retirement and investing, because those questions about EFTs, crypto, insurance as an investment vehicle, you really have to have enough time to at least share so that individuals aren't making decisions based on very high level information. So I'm committed to coming back, ladies, and looking forward to it.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Will our chair, Ms. Tanya Stewart.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to each and every one of you for joining us this afternoon and our economic legacy presentation. Kenita, job well done. Thank you so very much for sharing your knowledge on budget, saving, and investment. and know that I am particularly excited about the next level of retirement. On behalf of our chapter, thank you very much for taking the time out to spend with us and our guests and family members who have joined us this afternoon. I'd like to have a special thank you to our Economic Legacy Committee. Farida Stokes, who was our Mistress of Ceremonies this afternoon, along with Charlotte Hayes Gray and Robin Johnson. Ladies, thank you very much for putting this program together. I also like to thank our technology committee who supports us in all our events that we do on the Zoom platform. And that would be Eileen Bright and Delilah Sprigner. I also like to thank our flyer committee for the advertisement that we send out to everyone so that you can join us on these presentations. And that would be Jada Robinson, Jametta Clark, and Alexis Malone. And to our chapter members that are here joining us this afternoon, thank you for continuing to support our program committee. And finally, to our leader, our president, Adrienne King, who continually supports each and every one of the committees in Epsilon, Upsilon, and Mega Chapter. As you can see today, she is in tune with what we're doing. Again, thank you for your leadership, President King. And to everyone, again, thank you. I hope to see you all at our part 3, in which Kenita will be joining us along with another gentleman by the name of Mr. Gregory Carr, who will be sharing information on financial services alternatives. So please register for part 3. It will be just as informative as part 1 and part 2 today. And I am looking forward to seeing each and every one of you there. And to our prize winners, thank you very much for participating in our Q&A. Your prizes will be emailed out to you today. And again, everyone have a blessed week, and we'll see you on March 26th. Thank you.